My wife swore. She'd wait for me. Today, she pretends I never existed. Have you ever felt like the ground beneath your feet just disappeared? Like everything you believed in, everything you fought for, was nothing more than a lie? If you had gone through everything I went through in your life, you would also understand why I'm sitting here today, 53 years old, staring at a wedding photo that might as well be a picture of two strangers. My name is Benjamin, and I need to tell you something that's been eating me alive for the past 2 years. Something that makes me wake up every night in cold sweat, not because of the bombs I heard in Afghanistan, but because of the silence that welcomed me home. Over 50 years, you think you've seen it all. You think you understand what betrayal looks like, what loneliness feels like. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepares you for the moment when the woman who promised to love you forever looks at you like you're a ghost she's trying to forget. It was a Tuesday when I came back. I remember because Sarah always did the laundry on Tuesdays. The smell of fabric softener used to welcome me home during my brief leaves. I had been deployed for 18 months in Kandahar, counting every single day until I could hold her again. 18 months of writing letters that sometimes took weeks to reach her. 18 months of staring at her picture every night before closing my eyes, whispering the same prayer. Keep her safe until I come home. The last letter I received from her was in March, 2 months before my return. I'm counting the days, Ben. The house feels so empty without you. I sleep with your pillow every night. I love you more than words can say. Forever yours, Sarah. I must have read that letter 100 times. The paper was worn thin from my fingers tracing every word. I had this whole plan, you know? I was going to surprise her. Show up at the door with flowers, those white roses she loved so much. I even practiced what I was going to say during the flight home, how I was going to tell her about the promotion, about the house I wanted to buy for us in the suburbs, about the family we could finally start. But when I turned the corner to our street, something felt wrong. There was a different car in our driveway, a red Honda that I'd never seen before. The garden that Sarah used to tend with such care looked overgrown, neglected. The front porch where we used to sit and talk about our dreams had a new chair, just one chair, as if the memory of the second one had been erased. I know that there are many soldiers like me who have lost friends, colleagues, and did everything they could to find answers that would comfort them. If my story touches your heart, subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, because every day I share real stories that need to be told. Your support helps me reach even more people who need to know they're not alone. I walked up to that door with my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The key still worked. That should have been my first warning. If she was expecting me, if she was waiting for me, wouldn't she have changed the locks for security? Wouldn't she have told the neighbors to watch out for my return? I pushed the door open and called her name. Sarah? Honey, I'm home. The silence that followed wasn't the silence of an empty house. It was the silence of someone holding their breath, someone caught off guard. I heard footsteps upstairs, quick, panicked footsteps. Then whispers. 2 voices. One was hers. The other was a man's voice I didn't recognize. My duffel bag hit the floor with a thud that echoed through the house like a gunshot. In that moment, everything I thought I knew about my life, about my marriage, about the woman I had loved for 12 years, came crashing down around me. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part came when she finally appeared at the top of the stairs, her hair messy, wearing a robe I'd never seen before. She looked at me not with surprise, not with guilt, not even with fear. She looked at me with annoyance like I was an intruder who had just interrupted something important. "What are you doing here, Benjamin?" she asked, and those 6 words contained more poison than all the enemy fire I'd faced overseas. That's when I realized the truth that would haunt me for the rest of my life. My wife hadn't been waiting for me to come home. She had been waiting for me to disappear. After having lived so much fear overseas, my head screams of so much inner loneliness now that I never expected the real war to begin in my own living room. The moments of anguish and sadness were overwhelming inside me as I stood there, looking at the woman who had become a stranger wearing my wife's face. "What am I doing here?" I repeated her words, feeling like each syllable was cutting through my chest. "This is my house, Sarah. This is our house. I live here, remember?" She came down the stairs slowly, and with each step, I could see her building walls, preparing defenses. Behind her, I caught a glimpse of a man peering around the corner. Tall, clean-shaven, probably never held a rifle in his life, never wondered if he'd see another sunrise. He was wearing my bathrobe, The blue one Sarah had given me for Christmas 3 years ago. Ben, listen, she started, and I noticed she didn't call me Benjamin anymore. It was Ben now, like she was already trying to shorten our history, make it smaller, more manageable. Things have changed. I've changed. I sent you letters explaining everything. What letters? The words came out as a whisper. I never got any letters after March. She looked away, and in that gesture I saw years of deception unfold before my eyes. There had been no letters. There had been no explanation. There had been no courtesy of honesty, not even the respect you'd give a stranger. I filed for divorce 6 months ago, she said, her voice flat, emotionless. You should have received the papers. 6 months ago, I was in a forward operating base outside Kandahar, sharing a foxhole with my buddy Marcus, talking about the lives we were going to live when we got home. Marcus used to tell me how lucky I was to have someone waiting for me. Most of us got nobody, he'd say. But you got Sarah, you got something to fight for. Marcus stepped on an IED 3 weeks before I was supposed to come home. I held his hand as he died, and his last words were, "Tell your wife. Tell her she's lucky to have you." Now I understand the cruel irony of fate. While I was holding my dying friend, promising him I'd live a good life for both of us, my wife was filing papers to erase me from her existence. The papers went to your military address, she continued, still not looking at me. I assumed you got them. But I knew the truth. She had sent them to an old address, an address she knew was no longer active. She had made sure I wouldn't receive them, wouldn't have a chance to object, wouldn't be able to fight for our marriage from 8,000 miles away. Who is he? I asked, nodding toward the stairs where the stranger was still hiding like a coward. His name is Mark. He's a good man, Ben. He takes care of me. Takes care of her. The words hit me like shrapnel. For 12 years, I had taken care of her. I had worked double shifts before my military service to pay for her college. I had held her through her mother's cancer. I had been there when she lost her job, when she doubted herself, when she needed someone to believe in her dreams. And now, after 18 months of hell, after watching good men die, after carrying the weight of survival guilt that made every breath feel stolen, I was being replaced by someone who takes care of her. I sent you money every month, I said, my voice getting stronger, angrier. I sent you my combat pay, my hazard pay. Where did that money go, Sarah? For the first time, she looked uncomfortable. The mask slipped just a little, and I saw a flicker of the guilt she'd been hiding. I used it to pay for the divorce lawyer, she whispered. The room started spinning. She had used my own money I'd earned dodging bullets and watching friends die, to pay someone to destroy our marriage. Money I'd sent, thinking it would help her, thinking it would make our reunion easier, thinking it was an investment in our future together. You used my blood money to betray me, I said, and the words tasted like ash in my mouth. Don't be dramatic, Ben. People grow apart. It happens. Dramatic. She called my pain dramatic. This woman who used to cry at dog food commercials was calling my devastation dramatic. The mirror does not give me back the image of courage that I had anymore. Standing there in what used to be our home, I felt smaller than I ever had in combat. At least in Afghanistan, I knew who the enemy was. Here I was fighting shadows, fighting the ghost of a love that had apparently never been real. How long? I asked. How long has this been going on? She was quiet for a long moment, and in that silence, I could hear my own heart breaking. Not the quick, sharp break of sudden shock, but the slow, grinding break of something being crushed under unbearable weight. Does it matter? She finally said. But it did matter. It mattered because every letter I'd written to her had been a lie she'd encouraged. Every prayer I'd said for her safety had been wasted on someone who was already gone. Every sleepless night I'd spent worrying about her had been time stolen from grieving the marriage that was already dead. It started 8 months into your deployment, she said, and I could tell she was tired of pretending. Mark was our neighbor. He helped me with things around the house. He was there when I needed someone. 8 months. That meant she'd been living a lie for 10 months. 10 months of fake letters, fake love, fake promises. 10 months of me being a fool fighting for a home that no longer existed. The moments that followed were the darkest of my entire life. Darker than the night Marcus died. Darker than the ambush that left me with ringing in my ears that still hasn't stopped. Because in war you expect betrayal from the enemy. You don't expect it from the person who promised to be your partner in everything. I walked through that house like a ghost touring his own funeral. Every room told a story of erasure. The wedding photos were gone. My books were gone. My clothes were gone. Even my coffee mug, the one with "World's Best Husband" that she'd given me on our first anniversary, was nowhere to be found. But they'd kept the furniture I'd paid for. They'd kept the TV I'd bought her for her birthday. They'd kept the car I'd made payments on from my base in Afghanistan. They'd kept everything that had value and discarded everything that had meaning. "Where are my things?" I asked. "In storage," she said. "Unit 23 at the facility on Maple Street. I paid for 3 months after that." She shrugged, and that shrug contained more cruelty than any enemy soldier had ever shown me. Mark finally came downstairs, and I got my first good look at the man who had replaced me. He was soft in all the places I was hard, clean in all the places I was scarred, comfortable in all the ways I had forgotten how to be. "Look, buddy," he said, and I wanted to laugh at the audacity of him calling me buddy. "This doesn't have to be awkward. Sarah told me you were a good guy. We can work this out like adults." A good guy. My wife had reduced 12 years of marriage, of love, of shared dreams and shared struggles, to "he was a good guy," like I was some distant relative she'd once known. "Work what out?" I asked. "You're living in my house, sleeping in my bed, wearing my bathrobe. What exactly is left to work out?" "It's not your house anymore," Sarah said, and her voice had that sharp edge I remembered from our worst fights. "The divorce was finalized last month. I got the house. You got your military pension and your benefits. It was fair." Fair? Nothing about this was fair. I had fought for my country while they'd played house with my life. I had carried the burden of keeping other people safe while they'd been safe in the comfort of betraying me. "I want to see the papers," I said. She disappeared into the kitchen and came back with a manila folder. The divorce decree was there, signed by a judge I'd never heard of, dated 3 weeks ago. According to the document, I had been served by publication because I was unable to be located for personal service. Unable to be located. I had been at a known military base, with a known address, on a known deployment. They had simply chosen not to find me. But the worst part wasn't the legal language or even the division of assets. The worst part was seeing my signature on the papers. Except it wasn't my signature. Someone had forged my name, and apparently, no one had bothered to verify it. "I never signed these," I said, my voice barely audible. Sarah and Mark exchanged a look, and in that look, I saw the depth of their conspiracy. This hadn't been a crime of passion or a moment of weakness. This had been planned, calculated, executed with the precision of a military operation. "The lawyer said it was standard procedure when the other party is unreachable," Sarah said, but she couldn't meet my eyes. "You mean when the other party is expendable?" I corrected. That night I sat in my car in the parking lot of a motel off the interstate, staring at the storage unit key Sarah had tossed at me like I was some vagrant she was shooing away. I had nowhere to go. The apartment I'd lived in before marriage had been rented to someone else years ago. My parents had passed away while I was overseas. Something else Sarah had failed to mention in her letters. Something else I'd missed because she'd wanted me to stay gone. I thought about Marcus, about his last words, about the promise I'd made to him. "Tell your wife she's lucky to have you." The bitter irony was suffocating. There was no wife to tell anything to. There was no luck in any of this. There was just the crushing realization that I had survived hell only to come home to something worse. But sitting there in that parking lot, something shifted inside me. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was the survival instinct that had kept me alive in combat. But I realized something important. I was still here. They had tried to erase me, but I was still here. I had survived enemy fire, improvised explosive devices, and the weight of watching good men die. I had survived 18 months of wondering if each day would be my last. I sure as hell could survive this. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to disappear quietly. I wasn't going to let them rewrite history and pretend I had never existed. I was going to fight, not with violence, not with revenge, but with the one thing they couldn't take away from me. The truth. The next morning, I drove to the office of the lawyer who had handled my divorce. I walked in wearing my dress uniform, every medal I'd earned shining on my chest, and I asked to speak with him about a case of fraud. You should have seen his face when I told him I was Benjamin Morrison, the man whose signature had been forged on divorce papers 3 weeks earlier, the man who had supposedly been unreachable while serving his country at a known military address. Within an hour, he was on the phone with Sarah, and I could hear her voice through the receiver, high, panicked, making excuses that sounded pathetic even through cheap speakers. The legal battle that followed wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Not because I wanted Sarah back, that woman had shown me who she really was, and I believed her, but because I needed the world to know that I had existed, that our marriage had been real, that I wasn't some ghost who could be erased from history. The fraud investigation revealed everything: the forged signature, the deliberately wrong address, the use of my military pay to fund their deception. Mark, it turned out, had been more than just a helpful neighbor. He'd been Sarah's boyfriend since before my deployment. They'd planned this whole thing, waiting for me to be far enough away that I couldn't fight back. But they'd underestimated something important. They'd underestimated the brotherhood of soldiers. When word got out about what had happened to me, veterans from 3 states started showing up at the courthouse. Men and women who understood what it meant to sacrifice for others, who understood the weight of serving something bigger than yourself. Marcus's parents drove down from Michigan when they heard my story. His mother took my hands and said, "Our boy talked about you in every letter. He said you were fighting for something beautiful. Now we know he was wrong. You were fighting for something beautiful, but it wasn't her. It was the man you were becoming." The case made local news, then national news. Suddenly, Sarah and Mark weren't just 2 people who had betrayed a soldier. They were the face of everything wrong with how we treat our veterans. The public backlash was swift and severe. Sarah called me one night 3 months into the legal proceedings. Her voice was different, smaller, defeated. "I never meant for it to happen this way," she said. "Yes, you did," I replied. "You meant for it to happen exactly this way. You just didn't mean to get caught." "I loved you once," she whispered. "No, you didn't. You loved the idea of being married to a soldier. You loved the benefits, the steady paycheck, the story you could tell people. But you never loved me. If you had loved me, you would have been honest. You would have given me a chance to fight for us, or at least a chance to say goodbye." The divorce was overturned. The house was returned to me. Mark, it turned out, had been married the whole time, and his wife filed for divorce shortly after everything came to light. Sarah was left with nothing but the consequences of her choices. But here's what I learned through all of this. The most important battles aren't the ones you fight overseas. They're the ones you fight for your own dignity, your own truth, your own right to exist in a world that sometimes wants to erase you. I'm 53 years old now. I live in that house again, but it's different now. I've made it mine in ways it never was before. The walls are filled with pictures of my military service, of the friends I lost, of the life I've built from the ashes of betrayal. People ask me if I'm angry, if I hate her. The truth is, I'm grateful. Sarah showed me what real love isn't. She showed me that some people will take your best and give you their worst. But she also showed me that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. The mirror gives me back a different image now. Not the young man who went to war, not the broken soldier who came home to betrayal, but someone new. Someone who has been tested by both enemy fire and friendly fire and survived both. If you're watching this and you've been betrayed, if you've been erased, if someone has tried to rewrite your story without your permission, I want you to know something. You are not erasable. Your truth matters, your existence matters, your story matters. Don't let anyone, not a spouse, not a family member, not anyone, make you disappear from your own life. Fight for your truth. Fight for your dignity. Fight for your right to exist. And remember, the people who try to erase you from their history are usually the ones who know they don't deserve a place in yours. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more stories of survival, of truth, of people who refuse to be erased. Hit that notification bell, because every day, I share the stories that need to be told. The stories of people who discovered that sometimes the greatest victory is simply refusing to disappear. Your existence is not negotiable. Your truth is not erasable. And your story, whatever it is, however painful it might be, is worth telling. Thank you for listening to mine.